Supposed to be with us. And we're in this series called 153. There's a seat for everyone. You know, at the Lord's table, as we gather around Him, we're calling it 153, just a symbolic number of just God's harvest and reaching people for Jesus. And we're going to pick up a story in Luke, if you want to follow with me in your Bibles, Luke 14, where Jesus is at the table again. He seems to love to go to eat. I know Jesus wasn't overweight. I can't imagine that he was overweight. But what if you found out he had a body more like mine? What would that rock your theology? What if, boy, Jesus is a little pudgy. He's looking good. He's not all wormy looking like some of you, all skinny and wormy looking. He's full-bodied man. He liked to eat. I don't know. He walked everywhere he went. So that probably contradicted the eating. But he loved to be at a table with people. Here's an interesting thing I've noticed this week in studying. And if you can correct me, I welcome that. Just don't Google it and try to do it now and shout me down in the middle of the message. But from my understanding as I studied the scriptures, never was Jesus invited to go somewhere to come over to eat. And he said, "No, I'm not thinking. I'm not up to it." He never turned down an invitation. Now, there was a lot of them I would have turned down. I mean, be honest with you. This one we're at here. But when they invited him, he came. It's just a little simple principle about the nature of God. He goes where he's welcome. Where people say, "Bienvenidos," they say, "Welcome." Where you invite him, he'll come. He'll come to your dinner table. He'll come to your bedroom when your spouse is not feeling well and you lay hands on them. He'll come with your children when they're struggling with having bad dreams and you invite him, he will come. Now this situation, he gets invited to come to a party and it's a setup. It's a trap. He knows that, but he goes anyway because he's Jesus. He goes where he's invited. You may not get what you thought you were going to get by inviting him. He may turn the tables on you, but he comes where he's invited. I want you to look with me in Luke 14:1. One Sabbath, they got to get it. That's their holiest day. They don't do any work. There's a certain amount of distance they would only walk. They had all these rules on top of rules on top of rules. They literally turned it into a religious bondage where they judged other people on what it wasn't restful and fun like it was meant to be. It became ritualistic. It became bondage to them. Jesus keeps confronting. At one place he says, I am the Lord of the Sabbath. I can do what I want to do. I'm Jesus. Well, he's going to come up against these guys again in chapter 14. One Sabbath when Jesus went to eat at the house of a prominent Pharisee. Now, they got to understand, this is a trap. Because look at the next words. He was being carefully watched. That's another way of saying he was being scrutinized. He was being looked at in a way of, let's find some dirt on Jesus. Now, we don't have anything like that in our culture today. The news media, nothing like that. I mean, who would want to run for anything? Come on. Who? Yeah, there's people out there burning their yearbooks now. They're on eBay buying up all the old yearbooks from whatever year they graduated. Well, I learned that first. I tossed mine as soon as I, just whoop, don't need to read any of that. Whoop, it's gone. I'm not running for anything, but I don't want my yearbook out there. Voted most likely to incite a riot. That was my claim to fame in high school. Listen, we live in a culture that's so hypocritical because they love to find dirt on other people, but they can't find any dirt on them. It's always they're bad because I don't agree with their opinion. They're evil because I don't agree. And so it's a dirt, mud-slinging, chaotic news media, frenzy, politics. It's horrible. On both sides, it's horrible. But it's a spirit, and it doesn't skip the church. Religious people are notorious for feeling they have the spiritual gift of criticizing others. God has specially designed me to find faults in other people. I just notice them. I can discern them. I can see the fault. Let me help you. That's not a gift. That's called being a critical person. You're just critical. It's not a gift. The gift is finding something good in somebody that most people could never see something good in them. That's a gift. Pray for that. Anybody can see somebody's weaknesses. You know, it's just not a miracle. It's not a miracle to discover that somebody has weaknesses. Well, Jesus, they set this trap for him like the devil will do, and they're bringing this sick guy in. Now, it says in verse 1, it says he was being carefully scrutinized or watched. They were spying on him. Verse 2, they're in front of him. How did he get there? I don't know. They only invited this sick guy is to bait the trap for Jesus. They didn't want him at their party. They bring him in, throw him in front of Jesus. It's the Sabbath. He's suffering from dropsy. Who knows what dropsy is? Raise your hand. You know what dropsy? What is dropsy? In the last service, nobody knew. I didn't know till I had to look it up. What is dropsy? Swollen and your joints. It's very painful. I can't have fun with it now that you got some heavy on there. You know, I was going to have fun with the word, you know. I did that. Well, I got to move on for that. Just cut that right out. Well, whoo. It's the modern day term for dropsy is edema. It's a swelling. It's apparently extremely painful and lethal and fatal. And so this guy's really sick. They bring him to the party, and they don't care that he's sick. And they don't care if he can get better. They want to trap Jesus. It's cheese on the mousetrap. It's just baiting Jesus. In verse 3, he asked the Pharisees and experts of the law, is it lawful to heal upon the Sabbath or not? In other words, they're all about all the rules and the things, and you can go this far but not that far, and you can do this, but you can't do that, and you can't, you know, it just, all this just religious stuff. I mean, if you don't just Google sometime about some of the dietary rules in the Orthodox Jewish culture and what really is kosher and what's not kosher. What is and talk about it's unbelievable. You got to have like a doctor's degree just to find out what you could eat or not eat. And it's so bondage. They mean well, but they're missing the joy that Jesus made the Sabbath. So whenever you get to a place in your religious life where you don't know if it's the right thing to pray for that person to get better or not, know that you've moved into a Pharisee's heart. When you're more focused on the ritual and the rules than you are on the miracle and the grace. When you're more focused on how somebody's doing it than the fact that they're doing it and people are getting better. I don't ever want to pastor a church where we become more focused on us and our likes and wants and preferences, and than we are on the people that need to be healed. We want them healed. We want them to get better, even if it challenges our traditions and challenges whatever. So Jesus says, is it lawful? But they remain, verse 4, they remain silent. I love that. Jesus shut their mouths because they can't answer. He's trapped them now. He says, verse 5, if one of you has a son, let me read verse 4. But they remained silent, so he took a hold of the man and healed him on the spot. Boom! Dropsy's gone. Swelling's gone. Pain's gone. Is this man happy? Sir, don't get so emotional. You're just, sir. Just calm down. I'm going to have to ask you to calm down. You're in church. Sir, stop being so excited. He's healed. There's no room for joy in these people's hearts because Jesus didn't do it the way they thought. He should have waited another day and done it on the next day, not on the Sabbath day. So they have no joy that the guy's healed. Verse 5, he says, if one of you has a son or an ox that falls in a well on the Sabbath, will you not immediately pull him out? And again, they said what? Nothing. Because what do they have to say? Nothing. Because he's Jesus, and he flipped the trap on him. You're telling me your boy falls in the well, and you're going to go, well, sorry, buddy, it's a rule, it's religion. You're going to have to drown, and I'm just going to let you die because I couldn't violate my religious righteousness. I couldn't, no, I'm going to leave you in there. You know, we live in a culture where these guys would have taken the boy out of the well, and these guys would have taken the ox out of the ditch. But what we live in a culture, now don't hear what I'm not saying. Touchy subject. Don't hear what I don't say. Hear what I say. Because I'm an environmental person. I love John Muir. He was a Scottish dude raised by a religious, he would have made these Pharisees look like lightweights. His dad was brutal, ruthless, and he wasn't allowed to read any book but the Bible. He said, well, that's a good thing. No, it's not a good thing. We're not afraid of other things. You can still use discretion. You shouldn't let your kids just pick anything they want to read. But it doesn't have to be, quote, spiritual. John Muir was raised on the hard side, the dark side of Christianity. And so he rebelled against it, and he self-educated, went to school, got in a factory accident and damaged his eye and was almost blind, and decided to go on this march. He walked from the north of America down all the way to Florida, and on this march he was reading Darwin's book on a selection of species. Darwin wrote as a man that wanted to prove there isn't a God, there's no room for God in creation, or not, I wouldn't use the word creation, but in evolution, there is no God. But John Muir read his book and came away with it with the creation is God's cathedral. He worshiped not the creation, but the creator that made the amazing creation. He went on to be the first one to fight for Yosemite, to be set aside. He was the first contemporary environmentalist. And I say, go John. I mean, he's just an amazing guy, and I love trees, and I love animals. But I'm going to just tell you this. If I stood up here with a loggerhead turtle, anybody know, if you live in Southwest Florida, you know what a logger, you've heard it. If you lived on Sanibel, as I did many years, you can't have lights on out on your beach property because it would keep the loggerheads from crawling in and laying their eggs. Highly, highly, highly protected. Loggerhead turtle, big giant turtles, and they say they're good eating. So I'm not going there. I'm just saying, in the old days, there was plenty of them. They'd flip them over on the beach, and I had old Florida people that lived there since 1901 on the island, and they would eat them. They didn't know any better. They harpooned porpoises, too, and I would cringe at that. I love porpoises, but there were so many of them, it was like mullet. It was just like they didn't think about it. It was a different culture. Anyway, different day. But if I stood up here this morning and had the news called him and said, Pastor has loggerhead turtle egg. It's not even hatched yet. Wham! I smashed it on the floor. People would 911, call the environmental police, call the cop. I'd go to jail. But yet in our culture, we can take a baby from mama's womb, or even at birth now, people want to fight for, that we can take a baby's life because, I don't know that I wanted that. Can I put him back in and get a different one? I don't know. I didn't want an imperfection in life. Nobody does, but you can't control that. What a culture we're living in that they want to make it legal, that a baby could come out and be killed because it has a weakness. It's not perfect. What's Darwinism? It's only the strong survive. Let's kill all the weak babies. Let's kill all the handicapped children. Yeah, that makes sense, but don't you touch that egg. Now, again, I love loggerhead turtles, and I would never want to damage their egg. I love the environment. I'm a tree hugger. There's trees I'd fight for that they wouldn't cut them down. But there's a higher priority than the ox. It's people made in God's image. So let's be careful in our priorities. Jesus says, I'm going to heal this guy. I don't care what your religion says. Now, verse 7. He noticed. Now, who's watching who now? Jesus is watching them. No, he's not watching them to condemn them. They watched him to condemn him. That's a wrong heart. It's like the guy that came up to me. He used to sit on this side of the church. I sat on this side of the church. And he comes up to me and he says to me, are you all right, Pastor? I'm like, yeah. He said, you don't look like you're doing well. I was watching you in worship. And I'm like, ooh, God, I got all creeped out. Like, my first thing, if I was thinking on my feet quicker, I would have said, what are you watching me in worship for? That's creepy. Well, you look like you're kind of troubled. He was trying to get something out of me. I may have been. It's none of his stinking business. Stop putting their eyes on. This is what they were looking for, something to critical. Jesus is watching them. They've come to the banquet and they're elbowing people. They're elbowing people. Listen, this happened to me one time. Back in the I can't remember, 80s or 90s. When you're old, you can't remember when stuff happens. But the prophetic ministry, some of you will know what that means. Others don't. Anyway, it was people that were gifted, anointed to prophesy over people. And it creates a frenzy. If you've ever been around it. I mean, people so desperately want to hear from God. And so I was at this huge conference, and they wouldn't open the doors. So everybody got there early. We're standing in line. It was like a rock concert, but it's a prophetic thing. It's not a concert. So we're all waiting there, and we're singing together. There's like 100 people at every door. I mean, thousands of people came. Everybody wanted to get to the front seat. I mean, we're worshiping and singing together, fellowshipping, till they opened the doors. I'm telling you, this little nun, I don't know what a nun was there, but this nun, she elbowed me like Charles Barkley. I mean, like broke ribs, knocked me out of the way. I nearly got trampled. People rushing to get into the front seats at a Christian event to get nearer to the Holy One. And in the middle, I'm rushing with them. And I'm like, what are you doing? This is insane. That's what these people were doing. They wanted the best seats that they felt were the most important seats. They wanted the seat that would make them look when they got done at the party. Hey, guess who I sat by? Guess where So he's watching this going on. First, they rejected the sick guy. They weren't happy that he got healed. I guarantee you he didn't stay. He didn't want to stay. Who'd want to stay around those people anyway? He went on, he's happy, he went home, hugging his wife and his kids. So now you got Jesus that they tried to set a trap for. He's turning the table and said, I've been watching you. I want to help you on something. I want to teach you. Now he's not going to teach them manners. He's going to teach them a kingdom principle. This is how my kingdom works. Look what he says. Verse 8. When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you, believe it or not, there are some. That's the implication here. Do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. Shocker! You're not the biggest deal in the pond, so get out of the seat. So he says, verse 9, if the host who invited both of you, representing God, because he's going to go on and tell the story we're going to look at next week about God inviting us to his party. But if the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, hey, get up. This isn't your seat. That's embarrassing. Is that embarrassing? Come on. Put yourself somewhere where you can relate to this. You're at a banquet. You're at a party. And you've chosen a seat that's kind of the best seat, one of the good seats. And literally you're told to get up. And from now, all the other seats are filled in. You rush to get that good seat. You pushed your way to the top. You want to get noticed. And then you're told, no, wrong seat. He says, go, verse 10. When you've been invited, the end of verse 9. He says, give this man, then you're humiliated. You'll have to take the least important place. Go back to go. Do not pass, whatever the games is. You know, if you're playing Candyland, you go back where? I forget. But trouble. You go back. You got to go back. All the progress you thought you made. You're now in a place of going the wrong direction. You wanted to be promoted. You got demoted. Verse 10. But when you are invited, take the lowest place so that when your host comes, he will say to you, friend, move up to a better place. Then you will be honored in the presence of all your fellow guests. For everyone who exalts himself, this is a promise. This is a principle. You can blow your nose. You can pretend it's not in the Bible. You can just look the other way. But this is how his kingdom works. If you exalt yourself, self-promote, push your way, get your way. If you exalt yourself, you're going to be, say it with me, humbled. That's not fun to be humbled. Humbling yourself, painful. Being humbled, crushing. Been there for both. Don't like humbling myself, but it's way better than being humbled. Being humbled, you don't get to pick how it happens. Now let me design this humbling experience that I'm about to go through. Now, Lord, we're going to, at a time when people aren't really watching or listening, it's a quiet moment of humility. It's a secret place, Lord. Oh, that's prayer, not humility. Okay, secret place of prayer. So you're going to humble. Listen, when you're humbled by God because He loves you, it's not a fun experience, but it will happen because He loves you. And He's telling this story not to get people to fake humility. Oh, I'm not worthy to sit up there. Let me just sit back here. You know that's fake when you sit in a further seat back and someone says, hey, buddy, you're in my seat. And you say, wait a minute, I didn't sit in the good seats. These aren't good seats, and I'm not going to the back seat. You're not humble. Faking humility is worse than being prideful. Come on. I can deal with someone that's arrogant and prideful that knows it. They're right out there in front of you. But that person that's humble and knows it and makes sure you know, and they're not like other people, and they've avoided the traps, and they're just so humble. They're syrupy. It's like a sickening, I can't even describe it. It's fake. Fake humility is just masked pride, and that's not what He's teaching. He's not teaching fake. He's teaching just be humble. Now listen to me. I want to give you a little inside information, because one of the things the Vineyard has been blessed and good at, this church, this Vineyard, is we've been blessed and good at raising up leaders over the years. It's just a strength that God's given us, and we have a strategy that it'd be hard to notice it. And let me just give it to you. It's not the only. We pray. That's the number one thing. I ask God for laborers. My wife, our team, we pray. We teach them. Pray for laborers. Pray for God to raise them up. Pray for God to send them to us. We've never, and I don't say this as a boast, it's just not our culture. We've never had to hire from outside the congregation. Never. And now it's not that it's evil or wrong. And I'm not going to say we'll never do it. But we've raised up every leader that we have. If you're on staff in this church, you were raised up. You didn't come in and say, I'll take that seat. Let me help you how we do it. My wife and I, and we teach our team, we watch people that are in motion. We watch people that choose to take the lower seat. I'm not talking about people that are just hiding and they don't want to do anything. I'm talking about people that are willing to step up and help in areas that they're not necessarily gifted in, but they're willing to do it. There are people that say, how can I help? Where do you need me? What do you want me to do? How can I make the team better? How can I make the church better? What area can I serve in? When I watch people serving iced tea on Thursday night that have more money than I'll ever make in my lifetime, and they're pouring tea for people. I watch people that wash dishes, that have abilities to run businesses that are far exceed the dishwashing challenge, but they're just willing to do it. Where do you need help? Jesus teaches us that those that choose to humble themselves and do what's what, they're going to get promoted. And then what we do, again, we don't do it to mess with people, but we'll say, like with Pastor Jason, he's literally done every job in this church. But the nursery, because we don't let men in the nursery. Every job. And he'll get the job, and he never wanted to do any of the jobs. No, I don't want to do that. Oh, I can't do that. I can't do middle school. Well, you're going to do middle school, or you're not going to have a job. What do you do? Now, I know in the younger generation, you know what they do? What do they do? Got to learn to do the jobs you don't want to do to get to the job you want to do. You can't skip the I don't want to do it part. As John Wimber would teach in the Vineyard, no one gets in any easier than we got in. We didn't get to skip those steps. You know what? I watch churches that parachute leaders in, that weren't part of the blood, sweat, tears, pain, battles, fighting, failures, struggles. They just float in, drop into it, and pick up where they are. They don't get the sense of history of what it took to get to this place. And so we moved. Jason, we finally loved doing middle school. Then we said, now we need you somewhere else. Now he's crying, literally. I'm not leaving middle school. You want a job? Okay, I'll leave. No, it didn't go down like that. But we moved him around. We had to let go of this person that was incompetent in our finances. And we looked around the group, and we all realized none of us are very smart in that area. So we all looked at Jason. He knew computers. And we said, you're going to do it. He's like, no, screaming, clawed his claws. We drug him across the floor, put him in front of the computer and said, figure out the mess we're in. They had to get help. We had to hire people come in, CPAs, teach him how to do it. He ran the entire remodeling. How much money did we spend back then? Anybody remember? I mean, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars we remodeled this thing. Hey, are you here? Oh, he's here. It's not as much fun telling it when he's here. I got to tell the truth now. We spent over $300,000. That's a low number. We probably spent more than we needed to because you were on duty. That's true. If you think, how old were you? You think a 24-year-old that's not had really any construction experience and never ran a job, could oversee a multi-hundred thousands of dollars project? He did it. And it turned out great. And you know what the problem with that was? He got to go to the next seat. He didn't want to go to the next seat. But that's what happens when you're faithful in the kingdom of God. And I could do, Pastor Charles that led us in worship, he's been with us since he was 14 years old. Off and on. He's done a couple bouts out in Egypt and come back. But he's been with us since he's 14. He's only 24 now, but I know you're in here. You always know where Elvis is. He's moved up. He used to be Charlie Brown, but he was faithful with Charlie Brown, and now he's Elvis. Come on. And now what are you going with, Charlie Brown or Elvis? What are you going? Neither one. Well, I will let you recommend the next volunteer banquet who he'll be, and Tom Cruise or somebody like that. Okay, listen to me. I'm just trying to brag on some people just to say, listen, we appreciate everything people. This is a great church with people that are willing to do whatever needs to be done. You got to watch out that you're going to end up being a leader. If you keep being humble, you keep being a servant, you keep taking the seats you don't want to take, you're going to end up doing my job. Oh, I'm quitting today. Listen, I've got one more story to tell them. So this one was about humility is the way on. It's the way on. It's like, again, it's not fake it. It's not pretend it. It's genuinely know, Lord, I'm just glad to be invited. I'm glad the church welcomes me. I'm glad they love me. We had to pick a council member here a few years ago. And we went around and we thought, well, the first criteria, obviously, they love Jesus. That's given. The second criteria said, who in this church loves the Vineyard more than anybody we can think about? And then my second criteria was, who loves Jamie and Kim and their family more than anybody I can think about in this church? You said, you would put somebody on. I wouldn't put anybody on my council that didn't want to take a bullet for me. You're an idiot to surround yourself with people that don't believe in you and don't like. That doesn't mean they always agree with us, but they love us. And we picked Rich. Rich Frazier, he plays the drum. Not today, that was Asher. He plays the drums. Rich loves, you know why he loves this church? Because this church wrapped its arms around him when most churches would have turned their backs on him. This church watched him take the lowest seat and stay in there until we can. No, don't say. Listen to me. It's how the kingdom works. It's God's strategy, not ours. We just stumbled upon it. Look for faithful people. Look for servant-hearted people. Look for people willing to help. Look for people willing to serve without titles and recognition. Look for people that are willing to help in areas that they're not really gifted in. Look for people that are willing to do stuff that help other people get better than they are. Look for people that are just genuine servers. Those are the people that we've just said, come on and come on. And God raises them up. And he moves them on, and he takes them here, and because they don't belong to us, which I wish they did, but they belong to Jesus. All right, last story. You guys got to listen a little faster. That was just my introduction. Okay, verse 12. Then Jesus said to his host, now the host is happy. He's rebuked all the pushy people. Now he's turned the guns on the host. This is the guy that planned the party. And you see the host, he's waiting for him to say, you're an amazing guy. You've done an amazing party. And because I'm Jesus, I owe you. What do you want me to do for you? I come out of the bottle as genie. And what wish would you want? No, well, look what he says. Verse 12. Then Jesus says to the host, when you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers, your relatives, or your rich neighbors, which is basically who was at this party. Now, he's not saying it's never right to do that. Don't read the Bible so literal. He's saying don't be exclusive. He's not against family gatherings. He's not against business gatherings that you're trying to gather clients. And he's against manipulating gatherings. He's against rejecting people that you deem as unworthy gatherings. Now look what he says. Here's the motive. Here's the reason why not to always invite people that are the important, the successful, the people that can do stuff for you. This is the reason he gives. He says in verse 12, if you do, they might invite you back and you will get repaid. That's how our world works. Scratch his back, he scratches yours. You do him a favor, he'll do two for you. He's not saying that that's evil. He's just saying that's it. He's saying that if you just do for people that can give back to you, that you can get something from them, that you have expectations, that you're literally just manipulating them, because let's invite them because they may do this. Jesus warns that I take this to apply it both personally but as a pastor. And we've built our church with both the humility principle but with the invitation principle that God, we're not going to be the church of the who's who. It's kind of like a friend of mine did one of those church directories with all the people's picture in it. And I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at the first pages, and there's all these handsome, pretty people. I said, I don't recognize, I live in Cape Coral, I don't recognize, because he gets people from our church, and well, you don't have any of their pictures in here. There are models. They hired models to represent the church because the church people were just so ugly. No, I'm just kidding. It's true. Look around. What if we were picking from this crowd? Let's put their face up. That'll bring people to the vineyard. Ah! Let's cut the pastor's head off. Let's put, Brad Pitt on there. Come on. He'll get somebody here. Listen, I'm like, dude. He goes, yeah, I never thought about that. I said, it's not real. And people want to, if you want, listen, I never signed up for church to be a pastor and thought that I would pastor people I didn't want in the church. That's terrible. I get it. You can judge me all you want. This is going to come back to you. I set out to pastor a church of people that made me look good. And if you're broken and you're a mess and you're a loser, you don't make me look good. I need you to make me look good. I almost killed myself in the church too, trying to have a church that looked good. I mean, I'm telling you, we only had about 100 of us. It's a little easier when you have a smaller crowd. I worked hard, and then I'd get it to where it's looking pretty good, and then this couple would come, and they just ruin it. They're a mess. They're living together. Their children are wolf children, and it's like, how do you die? Who let them in? You know that sign that churches, I love it. I love it. You ride through the South, you see it on every church. Everyone is welcome. That's such a lie. I could list a mile long that if you walked in that door, you're going to be escorted right out. Everyone's welcome, but you, and you, and you, and you, and them. Everyone's welcome that's like us, looks like us, thinks like us, votes like us, smells like us, talks like us. You're welcome. That's not the kingdom of God. Jesus said, listen, he's telling this story because look what he says. If you just invite people that can do something for you, wow, well, they would be an asset in the church. I've had people tell me that. You know, it's like when people say, do you have any doctors in your church? And I'm like, you want to be able to say that. You know, we got a neurosurgeon. Yes, a neurosurgeon. Yes. I had a doctor here visit here a while back, and I'm like, wow, a doctor visited. I think he was a neurosurgeon. I don't know what he was. And I'm like, wow. He said, you know, and I'm bringing out get the CDs of the worship. Come here. Oh, you like the worship here? Get the CD. Let me pick a couple and introduce them to that won't scare them away. Not them. I can't pick it. Where's that rent a couple that looks good to make the neurosurgeon feel comfortable in the church? It's paralysis. Oh my gosh, a neurosurgeon. We're a bunch of idiots in here. See, I set out, I'm telling you, most pastors would never be honest like that. But we all want a church that makes us look good. You want your kids to make you look good. Come on, tell the truth. Then they become teenagers. And you're like, why did I have them? I wanted them to make me look good. Now the police are calling me. Come on. Jesus says, listen, if you're going to, let me tell you the other secret to this church is the other half of this verse. He says, you know, you can invite people that'll pay you back, and that's it. You got your reward. Boom, you're done. Or, verse 13, when you give a banquet, you could invite the poor, the crippled. They can't even get there. They need a ride. The poor, the cripple, the lame, the blind. Never made it to the list of who's who. Got nothing to give. Got no money. Got no strength. They're a giant sucking sound when they walk in. Giant. Need. I want to see give. But God keeps bringing. And we've decided as a church years ago that we're going to love who God sends us. And we're going to embrace who God brings here. And we've started a dinner church on Thursday nights that I'm telling you, it's one of the greatest things. If you've just come, sit, and watch. If you've never, don't come serve yet. Just come sit at the table. Eat the food. Meet the people. Listen to the sermon and the worship. And then you can help clean up afterwards. But then you can start serving. Because I'm going to tell you something why this church gets blessed. We get blessed because we do stuff for people that can't give us anything back. And guess who can give us something back? The one who loves those people. And if you take care of those people, God's going to take care of his people. If you love those who no one else loves and no one else pays attention to, there are people that have my attention on Thursday night that I spend time with that I'm telling you, it sucks every bit of life out of me. It's not my natural, I don't just gravitate towards those kind of needs. I just don't. It's hard for me. And God doesn't go, oh, bless his heart on him. He's like, and bring him over. And that one, that guy from New York, bring him every day. Hey, Pastor Jamie. Oh, my God. I'm going to go hide. He's going to wear me out again. It's draining. These are not people that have it together. They're not people that you're going to put in charge of anything yet. They're the Daniels in the church. Is he here? He was here in the first service, so I talked about it. He knows. You know, Daniel's got special needs. And he first started coming to the church, he scared me. I never grew up around special needs. He's autistic. I never grew up around it. Now kids go to school with. When I went to school, you were isolated. I never was around, and he scared me. And he was awkward, and he disrupted the service. He'd come up right in the middle of the service, and he'd hand me his Bible and say, "Where are we?" Now, most people would be like, "Oh, isn't that kind? Isn't that nice?" And I'm like, "Dude, I'm preaching. I'm the man of God up here with the Bible. You're on film. I look like an idiot up here. Where are you in the Bible?" It didn't bring out the best in me. And then I was making fun of him because I could imitate his voice. I was making fun of him to some of the young leaders, and they were laughing with me. And I was sitting right over there where I sit and worship. And he was sitting, and every now and then he'll clap, but he does. And the Lord spoke to me. I'm worshiping. I'm good at it. I've been doing it for years. I'm like a professional worshiper. Watch me. Instead of worrying about whether I'm having a bad day, watch me worship. I'm worshiping, and God says, he's a much better worshiper than you are. And I'm like, oh, what? He doesn't do anything. I know the moves. I've got the moves down. I can do the one hand, both hands. I can do I've got a repertoire of moves that are amazing. He's a better worshiper than me. And the Lord said, and if you don't stop making fun of him, I'm not going to listen to you worship. Do you think I repented in that moment? Come on. When Jesus turns the tables and says, you're a terrible worshiper, and you're the pastor, that doesn't look good on the resume. I'm using you, Jesus, as a reference. Bad worshiper. Unloving, unkind pastor. I repented. I said, God, forgive me. And he wouldn't understand the repentance to him, but I just started loving him. I started taking him home after church. And before I know it, the younger leaders were embracing him. And then Deborah embraced him in the kitchen. Now I know he's literally the secret pastor of the Vineyard. He runs the church. When you get into my office, you see I'm not there. It's Daniel writing the sermons. My wife loves him. He prays for our family. He loves your wife like, oh my God. I got to see Christopher. He loves, and we put people on duty that he doesn't come up to the pulpit anymore and ask where we are in the Bible. He'll just sit by a blonde and figure out where we're going to be in the Bible. And so, but our church learned to embrace him. And our church has been on this journey for some of you that are newer. We've been on this journey of learning to love unlovable people. Now, if they're unsafe, that's different. We show them the door. But unlovable, broken, failed, people that don't have filters, people that, now, I wish it worked where we could do the church draft. If I invented it, I'd make $1 million, a TV show. We'll call it church, they have fantasy football, fantasy church. Where you pick, you do a church draft. Who gets to, listen, I call up Pastor George at Grace. George, you got a pretty smoking hot worship leader over there. We need a little help over at the Vineyard. I'll send you a children's ministry worker, her husband Taz, and I'll send you a couple that's really good at greeting, and then this other couple, now we won't talk about them, but I'm going to send them 3, first round. One's a first round draft pick, the other 2, and we'll do the swap. You went first, some of you would go first round. Others, I'd have to bundle you in on the deal. You wonder how a pastor thinks. I'm helping you. We want to trade. You want to do it in your marriage sometimes, so come on. You can't. You're married. You can't trade him in. I know there's better models out there. I know it runs better. I know they're stronger, more handsome. He's your husband. You can't trade him in. Just take him in for an oil change. Just get a tune-up. Get a paint job. You can't trade him in, and I can't trade you. I've got to learn to love you. John Wimber said this, the founder of the Vineyard International. We need the poor more than the poor need us. At broken, outcast, lost, nobodies, add that, whatever. We need them. Why? Because they expose how unloving we are. They show how self-centered we are. They show how we are just so geared to loving people that are worthy of our love. They expose how little we value others that have little to give. I need the poor in my life. My soul's better for it that we have a church that is made up of all. Because we had a guy that finally came in for breakfast this morning where he normally stands outside the building with his big giant bag. He's homeless. He's been coming for years, and something happened. Somebody scared him, and he won't come in, and he won't sit. And he sees me and he runs because I just try to talk to him. But he stayed in this morning, and I thought that was an accomplishment. He's got this big, giant duffel bag on his shoulder. You go walking into most churches with a big, giant duffel bag, you got security all over you. Now, we have security, and they know him, and they know about him. So I'm not trying to minimize. I'm just saying there are people that we let come that a lot of churches would not. But because we make room, God makes room for us. We're not earning it, but we're putting ourselves in the place that says, God, they can't repay us, but you can. And that's not wrong. He tells us that. Not only now, but in the resurrection. So dinner church, one of the best financial strategies you could ever do as a church. Care for the broken. Love on the poor. Serve those that can give nothing back to you. And watch God take care of your needs. If it works for a church, it'll work for you as an individual. If it works for us to be challenged and stretched to love those that are unlovable, then think about inviting somebody with your little pack of cards that you would deem, boy, they're not really people necessarily that I would want to come to church, nor would I want them to sit beside me in church. Let me invite them. I'm not saying don't invite up and outers. Listen, we finally did get a doctor in church for a while, till I found out he was wearing his wife's underwear. I'm serious. I'm like, dude, stop telling people the Bible. He preached the Bible to everybody. And go home, put on his wife's clothes. I'm just broken. I'm not saying I threw him out of the church. I just told him to quit preaching to people how spiritual you are. You're a mess. Addicted to this and addicted to that. So he had a title. Oh, well, he's a mess. I'd rather someone come in as a mess, be loved on, than to pretend that you're the Bible scholar, but you inside, your wife hates you, your kids hate you, your grandkids are scared to be around you. You're scary. Stop quoting the Bible. We don't care how much Bible you know if it's not in your life. So it's not the fact that we can't love broken people. It's the fact that broken people need love to get better. And we want to help people get better. We're not a church that just says, just stay in your brokenness. I'm watching our dinner church grow in the last few years. We worshiped with just Charles and the guitar Thursday night. And I'm telling you, Jesus was in the house. He breathed on it. Because their needs, they're not afraid to say, help. They're not afraid to say, someone sat down at the table that I had encouraged to come and visit. And the people at the table started helping them know where they can get some other free food in the area. Well, the person that sat down was very well off. They didn't say that. But that's just the table's idea was, can we help you? You're new here. We found other places that can help us out too. They're giving generous people in other ways. And we've watched some emerge out of that are working in our kids' ministry now, that are serving in our church. And God doesn't put a lid on it and says, well, you came in broken, stay that way. No, you come in, you get loved on, and watch them emerge into leaders in the kingdom of God. Amen? I'm not wanting to trade any of you. Got to do about 9 disclaimers now because somebody's going to try to trade me. He doesn't want me. You can trade me. There's a lot better pastors than me out there, but just not here. You got to go somewhere else to find them. I'll never forget standing at that doorway. This couple comes in. They're one of those couples, they got Bibles. I like that. That appeals to me. Their children were well dressed. They didn't look like wolf children. Wolf child. What's a wolf child? Somebody wanted to know that. A wolf child's an 8-year-old that looks up at your kid's worker who happens to be a council member and says, F you moron. That's a wolf child. That's a child that should be grateful I wasn't the children's worker. Really, there are no wolf children. There's wolf parents that produce wolf children. But you got to love them. You take them. They learn. You love on them. You think I make this stuff up. Some of you do. I know you do. He's exaggerating. I'm holding back. I'd scare you away. You'd never come back. Church come in, dress nice. They seem to be in love. I said, oh, welcome to the Vineyard. We're so glad to be here. I said, are you coming? Yeah, we're coming from another. Where are you coming from? They named the church. I'm buddies with the pastor, one of the most godly men I know. And they say to me, yeah, we left that church because that pastor is just undisciplined. I panicked. I'm like, he's one of the most disciplined men I've ever met in my life. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, they think he's undisciplined. And he's got an anger problem. And I'm thinking, him? I've never heard him raise his voice. I'm like, really? And they said he's compromising. He did a wedding and he let them play, Hey Macarena. I don't even know what the song means. I've done 100 weddings where they play. I'm like, is that bad? They're like, it's horrible. Don't you know the words? I don't know the words. I can't understand it, and I don't care. He played the Macarena. It's somewhere in the Bible. Thou shalt not play Macarena. Is that a Spanish word? Does it mean something? What's Macarena mean? Don't tell me what. I don't want to know. All right. Listen, I looked at him and I said, let me just love on you for a minute. If you thought he was undisciplined and kind of worldly, you'll never make it at the Vineyard. Buddy, her head spun around on her shoulders, blood vessels popped out like I would told her she wasn't welcome. I just said, you're not going to make it at the Vineyard. And basically they kind of huffed in, sat down, and it's like, we'll see about that. You can't tell us. They survived like 3 weeks. And then her head blew up in one of the services. Brains were splattered all over the wall. They had to carry her out. She was straitjacketed as she got outside screaming, he's a heretic! He's a heretic! He's a blasphemer! Blasphemer! Maybe I embellished just a little bit. But they did leave very unhappy, singeing emails, hand grenades tossed, very painful, because they realized that other pastor was a saint compared to me. I tried to tell them, they wouldn't believe me. All right, I think you get the point. You've listened too slowly. Stand up with me. I had a lot more good stuff to get to, but I ran out of time. There wasn't any good stuff in there. But no, get the heart of our church. We want to love people. We want to worship together. Come on. You got a song in you? I made them wait. No, it's true. They don't get, they're hungry. They've been here since like 6 this morning. And they're like, you need us for the last song? Charles can do it by himself. Elvis, yeah. Elvis can do it. Elvis can do anything. Thank you very much. It's okay to laugh. I'll give you permission. Laugh at yourself. Laugh at me. Laugh at the church. Lighten up. We're a mess. You're a mess. God's works in messes. He specializes in them. It's the goodies, the better people, that I got it together. I can't be around those people, those kind of people. Those are the kind that God doesn't do much work in because they don't want him to. They don't have a need. They don't have a problem. We are a church that's an ugly church. We say, God, we need you. We're not trying to be all together and pretty. We're not trying to be successful and somebodies. We want to take the back seat like Jesus did and let him say, come on, take that, come on, get it, come on. There's more in you than that. Come on, don't just stay back. There is a point when you can sit in that back seat and you can be prideful to not come out of it when you're called to come out. That could be false humility too. Well, no, that's just an excuse. You don't want to do anything. It's the other extreme of the person that pushes themselves. So be willing to say, all right, Lord, if you need me, I'll serve there. I'm yours. I'm yours. I'll take whatever seat. I'm just glad to be at the table. I'm glad to be standing. My wife and I just want you to just hear me. Listen to me. We love this church. I'm hard on you. But here's my best compliment I could give you and our staff, our team. If my wife and I were not the pastors of this church, there's no other church anywhere I know of that I would go to but this church right here. And there's a lot of leaders that are in their church, and if they could swap, they'd swap churches. That's sad. It's sad. And there's been days I've felt that way. God, could I just change? I like the location. Could you just give me a new group? Could you just give me some people that are nice, some happy people? Can you? And it's like that scene in As Good as It Gets when she says, I just want a normal boyfriend. And her mother says, there aren't any. We all would like one. There aren't any. There's just people. We're all broken. We're just people. Let's worship Him. He loves just people. He loves real people. He loves us just the way we are, but He won't leave us that way. Let's worship Him together. Come on, church.